Go.
Good morning, everyone. This is Tim and Julie Harris, and this is the Harris Real Estate University. So we're now doing Harris Real Estate University Presents events on these Fridays, and we're also doing superstar interviews. So this call today is on one of Julie and I's favorite topics. It's something that it's one of those things that once you learn it, once you get it, once you internalize it, it really does change your life. I'm not overstating the importance of all of you paying attention on this call and taking really great notes. You're going to get, assuming you pay attention, a lot of aha moments during this call, like a lot of you did last week when we presented the 4 distinct personality styles. Some of this stuff is so important that if you just get even half of the information in your head clear, it literally can change not just your business life, but also your personal life. It'll answer a lot of questions. That's the thing that a lot of this stuff does, is it gives you an opportunity to be introspective. You can kind of ask yourself, well, why is it this has happened in my life in the past, and why is it that has happened in my life in the past, and why is it that I, work well with this type of client but not with the other, and why does it sometimes seem things feel like they take longer than they should to learn? Why is it that sometimes I'm really successful at something that I almost seem to have a natural talent for it, and other times it seems to take forever? Those types of questions, the introspective questions, the questions that all of us ask, if not consciously, subconsciously, constantly in our lives, trying to monitor basically our progress and trying to really stay focused on, hopefully, on being successful. So today's topic is something that, again, is one of those topics that if you internalize and you understand and you appreciate and you adapt to and you apply, you're going to find that it really does have a huge impact on your life. So Dr. Marston was credited for this, but having researched this yesterday, I learned that Dr. Marston just contributed to it. But it's called the 4 stages of learning, and it's also known as the 4 stages of competence. Before Julie gets with her notes, what I want to do is I want to give you guys an analogy. Might be a parable, I'm really not sure. So here's the story. I want you to imagine that you're going to the airport as the pilot of a jet. All right? Now stay with me on this. I know I'm getting into the details here a little bit quicker than I normally do on these calls, so hopefully you've already downed at least 1 cup of coffee, or you're already basically settled in, depending on where you are in the country listening to this, settled in for lunch, have your feet up on your desk, really paying attention, focusing, and taking notes. So you're a pilot. You're a pilot of a big commercial airline. And let's say you have to go to the airport and you actually have to be the one that's going to do all the work that normally the other airline employees would do. So you literally have to go to the airport and you literally have to sort of monitor the loading and the unloading of the luggage, the loading and the unloading of the passengers. You have to make sure everything. So let's just say, for the sake of this story, that you are, without a doubt, the most observant, most dedicated airline pilot ever. You're that guy that saved the people. It landed the plane on the Potomac. What was that guy's name, Julie? That captain?
Captain
Sullenberger.
Sully.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So you're Captain Sully, because I bet you he has this level of dedication when he's flying his planes. So you show up at the airport, and you're now monitoring the loading of the passengers, the loading of the luggage, and all the initial process is very laborious. It takes a long, long time. People, I don't want to sit there. I want to sit there, and somebody asking for an upgrade that they're not entitled to. They want to try to get it for free and all this other stuff. So fuel's getting loaded, food's getting loaded, planes getting cleaned out. If you're someplace where it's cold, the wings are getting de-iced and all that stuff. So you're monitoring, watching all that stuff getting done. So what you're trying to do, what your goal is to get the plane ready to take off. And then what the next phase, there's kind of 4 phases to really getting a plane off the ground. And the next phase is, as you're sitting in the pilot seat, you got your co-pilot, and if it's a big plane, you've got your navigator in the back, and now you've got your whole crew loaded, everybody's up, everything's loaded, all the passengers, everyone's waiting on it. You've been in that situation before, waiting for the plane to take off. So you're sitting on the runway, the plane's completely loaded with all the things it needs to get off the ground, enough fuel to get to where you want to go, and then some. And then what happens is you have to put down, this is the process, guys, pay attention. You've all been here before, but it's important because I'm going to be referring back to this story as we go through today's call. Your next, the next thing you do is you have to throttle down. You have to put full force down. You've all been on planes, I assume, and you know how much noise they make as you're taking off. You know how much absolute, it just sounds like the plane sometimes, depending how short the runway is. it sounds like the plane's trying to tear itself apart. So what happens now as a captain is you have to go absolute full throttle. You have to fire up all 4 of those jet engines, and you have to give them full throttle, and you have to keep that throttle absolutely floored, basically. Of course, it's not floored. It's pushed forward all the way to the point where you've reached a safe cruising altitude, meaning you've cleared the runway, you've cleared the inevitable obstacles at the end of the runway. Have you ever noticed there's always a forest or some great body of water or some concrete wall or all kinds of things at the end of the runway? But you've cleared all of that. So now you keep the throttles completely open. You now are cruising at a safe altitude before then maybe you go to the next altitude. So that's how a plane works. Julie and I used to fly constantly for our business. Unfortunately, we don't have to do that as much anymore. So, there's usually 2 stages of a pilot climbing to altitude. Obviously, there's the first stage as he gets off the runway. Then he reaches altitude 1 almost. And if you've ever noticed, and typically what they'll do is they'll gain a little bit more altitude. And then we're at that final that third stage, okay? So when they're at the third stage, they're actually at a safe cruising altitude, be it 30,000 feet or whatever. And then when they're up there at that high, what happens is, and if you've noticed this is actually what happens, is the pilot can cut back on the fuel. The pilot can actually taper back on the fuel a little bit, and, essentially at that point what happens, they probably put it on cruise control. The pilot just eyeballs making sure everything's on track. For the most part, the computers are doing everything. It's a heck of a lot less work for everybody. Passengers are settled in. The plane is settled in. Everything's going as it should. The pilots aren't having to essentially, be constantly monitoring what happens. And then what happens is basically the plane, everyone's, essentially happy watching their movies, and the plane settles on. Now, what happens if all of a sudden there's an issue with the plane or the pilot or something else like that? What happens if all of a sudden the plane at that altitude, the pilot just decides to play the April Fool's joke and completely cut the fuel off to the jet engines, right? I mean, hopefully that never happens. But you get the idea. The pilot has to constantly monitor at that stage, keep the fuel at the specific level to maintain cruising altitude, and his main job at that point isn't as ferocious and isn't as busy and isn't as worried and isn't as stressful as it was when he was on the ground. He's on the ground. He's got to worry about not hitting other planes. He's got to worry about the happiness of his passengers, his crew, whether or not everything is getting loaded. But once he's at cruising altitude, once he's reached that third phase, really the fourth phase is just monitoring, taking after everything, making sure everything's being paid attention to, making sure everything's working like it's supposed to, and taking care of any problems as they arise. But for the most part, he has now become the master of the air, and he is flying that beautiful jet. He has the time to think back and look around and appreciate the view, look at the stars if it's at night. It's a lot easier than it was at the first, maybe even 3 phases, but especially the first phase. Now, I want you to remember that story. Hopefully you've all got that vision now implanted in your brains. You've all had that experience before. Maybe some of you are pilots, so you can totally and completely understand where I was coming from with that. Julie, you can take it from here, but here's the idea, guys, that your 4 stages of learning, 4 stages of competence, are the exact same process as that jet is getting off the ground. So the process that I just took you through is the same process that you personally have to go through every time you're learning something. So what Julie and I are going to do is we're going to take you through the 4 stages of learning, and again, it's also called the 4 stages of competence, and we're going to ask you questions throughout this training session, and those are the questions that you have to ask yourself. Remember I said the introspective part at the beginning of this call? Introspective means the ability to look in at yourself and almost self-coach yourself, and then you're going to decide where you're at. It's going to answer some questions about where you should be and what you need to be doing to get there. So, Jules?
Sure. And so the first thing to realize is that there are 4 stages of learning. That in itself can be a light bulb to a lot of people. I know it was when we learned this and we had that aha moment and said, well, that's interesting, because you can think about things, and sometimes it helps if you relate this to non-real estate in your life. Anything that you can say you're really, really great at, you can kind of think about that plane analogy. First, there was the taxiing the runway. You're kind of figuring out things, and maybe eventually you got to cruising altitude, and whatever you're really good at, whether it's in real estate or something else, maybe you're a great soccer player. Maybe you write really well. Whatever the case may be, it took some steps to get there. You didn't just roll out of bed and be great at whatever you're great at. So it's helpful to keep that in mind and keep the flight analogy in the back of your mind as we go through this. So again, you can follow along at realestateinsidernews.com. The notes are posted, but you can also jot these down in your own coaching notebook. Sometimes it helps for you to jot things down and get them flowing through your brain so it stays with you. So the first stage of learning, and I'm going to warn you, a lot of these the terms sound similar, so pay attention and really focus here. The first one is called unconscious incompetence. Unconscious incompetence. Well, what does that mean? It means the individual does not understand or know how to do something and doesn't necessarily even recognize that they don't know. They don't recognize that deficit. In other words, they don't know what they don't know. They may deny the usefulness of the skill. The individual might recognize their own incompetence and the value of the new skill. They've got to do that before they move on to the next stage. So the length of time the individual spends in this stage depends on the strength of the stimulus to learn. That's literally the definition of unconscious incompetence. But again, you can think of that as the first stage where you don't really know what you don't know. Does that make sense, Tim?
It does.
So how do you know if you're in that stage? And if we apply this to real estate, what would that look like if someone's in that stage?
Well, I mean, if you don't know what you don't know, it's essentially like all of us start out when we're learning anything. You know, I remember having coached many new realtors. Occasionally we'll have, a free coaching call with someone who just joined one of our coaching classes. And as you're going through as a coach asking them questions, you're not focused on really, trying to pass along information as much as you're trying to find out how much they know.
That's true. The first several coaching calls are always sort of poking holes into their brain, so to speak, and seeing what's missing and what's filled in, what are they really good at, and what are they clueless on. And
the real problem is at this stage is that a lot of us don't recognize the fact that there is lots to know. At this stage, there are lots of details that, frankly, if you're not paying attention to, you're not going to actually know what to do. So your business isn't predictable, at that stage, or you're not able to be duplicated. You're not sure how to create new leads or what to do with the ones you have. Your perception of the market may not be accurate. So you might be thinking the market's going one way, or in the reality of it, it's going another because you don't know how to analyze it. Your income is much less than you desire or require. Sometimes you don't understand the importance of having listing inventory. Some of you guys don't get the fact that in this business, essentially, you have to be a listing agent. I'm not going to debate it. When you're a listing agent, your business is much better than if you're just focused on buyers. No two ways about it. You don't understand, you think that real estate is just slow versus the fact that you can have control over your cash flow through consistency. You're believing that just because everyone else in your office is not doing as well as they'd like, you think that you should be in the same position. You're not able to transcend their situation and your environment to essentially do better for yourself. You think you get REOs just from signing up with res.net. You are oblivious to the 4 personality styles.
Again, guys, this is how you know if you're in this first stage.
Right. So you think that all the banks just stink versus realizing that there are some simple tips and tricks that make all the differences, and not just getting them closed, but getting them closed quickly. So when it comes to short sales, you just think basically you actually believe that there are no little, let's just call them what they are, tricks and secrets to getting these things closed. You believe that you just submit some package and that the banks don't have their specific packages and processes. You actually believe that it's essentially like submitting a contract, and it's not, because you haven't taken the time to actually master that skill. You live from check to check month to month, and you feel like you're not in control of income. Another thing you might be guilty of if you're in this phase is you're not sure how to price a property. That's something that you would be absolutely stunned and amazed by, the number of you out there who think you know how to price a property. You think you do, but you absolutely have no clue.
If everyone knew how to price, there would be no expireds.
Yeah, and if everyone also knew how to basically convince owners to price their houses correctly, there'd be no owners. So there's no expireds. So there's another thing to consider is the fact that you don't have your skills. You are winging it. You think the way you think and present information is as good as it needs to be because it works 50% of the time. And you think 50% of the time or less is acceptable. It's not.
It's failing.
You rarely go on listing appointments, and when you do, you probably don't take the listing. The only listing appointments you go on are the ones with your centers of influence and past clients and lay-down listings, as they say, where they don't actually offer you any sort of challenges. In other words, you can't work for the more competitive, often more profitable business. You work with any lead any time without much pre-qualifying. So you're driving around buyers, and you frankly don't even know if they have been approved for their financing. You don't know what questions to ask.
You don't know that there are questions to ask if you're in this stage.
You think that the way you basically sell a house to a buyer is wear them down, show them everything on the market until they absolutely throw up their hands. They say, Uncle, now if I've seen enough houses, please just sell me one. You have no idea. You have no buyer presentation, an actual presentation you give to buyers. Here's another little thing we don't have in our notes, but when you're working with buyers, you're having to show them more than 3 houses over 3 trips. You don't know how to sell them a house with fewer than 3 outings, usually only 1, showing them fewer than 3 houses. You don't know how to do that, okay? So you think that signing up for things and spending money on lead generation websites, getting a designation alone is what causes you to have success versus taking specific, consistent action to implement those things and get results. Here's another thing we see when you're in this phase. You blame other agents, the market, the prospects, the banks for lack of success, for your lack of success. You have a sense of entitlement and or you're feeling of being a victim. So in other words, you actually believe that the bad news has anything to do with you. You actually believe that what you're reading in the news and what you're hearing other realtors complain about has anything to do with you. It doesn't. Your success, and Harris Real Estate University students, and literally thousands of them, as we've been teaching, coaching, and training now for about a decade, and the fact is that during this real estate crash, we've developed into the largest real estate online coaching organization that there is and maybe has ever been for the real estate space. The reason is because we've attracted to us agents who are now more successful in many times than they ever were even in the bubble. In other words, these agents have realized that not only is this an incredible market, but this is a market where, frankly, they're going to set themselves up for life financially. So that is how you know if you're in that stage or not. And a lot of you, I have news for you, are in that stage. You're in the unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know.
Now, maybe, Tim, they're there on some things but not others. Most agents are pretty good working with buyers. So they might be a couple of stages up on certain things, but they could be in complete unconscious incompetence regarding things like a listing presentation or negotiating short sales or how to actually break into the REO market. It's possible that you're in different levels in different parts of your practice. That's normal. I can say if we take it out of real estate, there's certain things like Pilates I've been going to for years. I'm in a different stage now than when I first showed up for the first class. So it's normal for you to say, you know what, I understand this unconscious incompetence thing, but it doesn't. I can't say, yes, that's me to everything you just rattled off, but I can identify certain parts of my business where I really am kind of a real estate zombie about it.
Well, let me give a real estate example, Jules, because you're actually making a really good point here. No, not surprising, of course, is that coaching client. I have a coaching client, many personal one-on-one graduate coaching clients. And if that's something you guys are interested in, I hand select who I'm going to coach. Julie does the same thing. You can email me directly at tim@myhreu.com, tim@myhreu.com. Don't advertise it, but if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, let us know. So, Michael, he has 18 short sales pending right now, and something like 17 of which are HAFA, okay? And he takes, on average, and he told me this yesterday actually, he thinks it's normal. He's probably listening right now. He thinks it's normal to have a HAFA short sale take 6 months to close. He hadn't told me that before, and maybe it was my fault for not asking, but he actually thinks that is normal. So one of our great short sale coaches, a lot of you have gotten to know and love, I know we have, is Michelle and Joel McClintock. Well, Michelle can close, honest to God, a HAFA short sale, and I asked her this yesterday, in less than 60 days, and she thinks she can get most of them done in like 45 days. Now, she told me also that last year or so far since HAFA came out, I wish I'd remembered the number. Michelle, if you're listening right now, go ahead and put it in the webinar. But I'm pretty sure she said 70 half-a short sales. So here's the difference. Michael hasn't as close as many as Michelle. Michael's expectations are that they're going to take 6 months because that's what everyone says. Michelle's done enough, so there are different stages of learning is my point. Some of you have never even listed a short sale. Some of you have never even put a short sale into contract. So you're at different stages. Things get easier as you become more experienced. Things get easier as you focus on mastering the skill. And here's something else that's not in our notes, but it's a simple fact. Malcolm Gladwell, in one of his great books, and how about this? Thomas Edison, they both said the same thing. In order for you to be actually considered an expert at anything, and I know some of you right now are listening to this call and you're walking around with a designation for short sales where you've self-proclaimed that you're an expert after taking what amounts to basically 8 hours worth of training. Well, by any definition, you're not an expert because the legal definition of expert is very specific, and also the overall definition of expert, look it up in the dictionary, is very similar to what I'm about to tell you. 10,000 hours on a specific activity. 10,000 hours. Now, I don't even know if Michelle has come close to spending 10,000 hours because, guys, that's way more than a couple years. You have to be intensely focused. But, see, even at Michelle's level, she's still learning. Even at Michelle's level, she knows when it comes to closing short sales that she knows she's not the best at it. She's always absorbing more information. That's what makes our classes so great because everyone realizes that when it comes to things like short sales, it's a moving target, REOs as well. Heck, everything in real estate nowadays, nothing stays the same. But if you stay the same, or let alone if you don't even, going back to the jet analogy, decide to throttle down and get your plane off the ground, you're never going to move forward. You're never going to master these skills. So as Julie pointed out, all of us are at different levels of learning on different activities. So Michelle is at a different level than Michael is when it comes to closing half a short sales, as an example. But Michael might be really, really good at going on, $1 million listing appointments in a specific subdivision, or doing some other activity like I know he practices karate. He might be like a 27th degree black belt. I don't know. You guys get the point? Throughout our lives, it is your goal to trying to be learning different things and accept and embrace the fact when you discover something new that makes you feel like a total ignoramus. Not knowing, feeling insecure because you realize how much you don't know, if you think about it, that is a wonderful feeling because it lets you know how much more exciting stuff there is in this world that you can master. So, Jules, what's the next phase?
Well, so the next phase is conscious incompetence. So remember, the first one is unconscious incompetence. In other words, you don't know what you don't know. Like Michael didn't know that it's possible to close something that fast, half a short sale. He didn't know that he was supposed to be asking that question. Is it possible to close them faster? So that's unconscious incompetence. Well, stage 2 is conscious incompetence. Though the individual does not understand or know how to do something, he or she does recognize that they don't know, as well as the value of getting that new skill and addressing that deficit of what they don't know. The making of mistakes can be integral to the learning process at this stage. So again, stage 2, you're moving out of unconscious incompetence where you don't know what you don't know. Stage 2 is conscious incompetence. You have that aha moment, maybe there's a better, faster way to do this. So how do you know if you're in this stage, Tim? This is stage 2, conscious incompetence.
By the way, guys, just so that all of you are clear, even if some of you perceive that you have some natural sales ability and some natural skill sets, you still cannot skip a phase. There's a question.
It's impossible, actually.
It's impossible. There's a question in the web. Well, I'll give a better general example. We will sometimes take on a new graduate coaching student, and this new graduate coaching student might even be successful by anyone's measure, selling a lot of houses. They might be the number one agent in their office, let alone their marketplace. It happens a lot. They might have a whole bunch of different spokes going on, lead generation. Everything seems to be going well. But after a bunch of questions and some little self-discovery on our part, we discovered that this person has, believe it or not, absolutely no pre-qualifying skills or absolutely no sales skills or has a horrible, listing appointment ratio. In other words, they have to go on 10 to get 5 or something like that. Not acceptable. bottom line here is if you skip a step, as a lot of you have, and not learning the basic skills that are necessary in this business, you will never ascend. You will never climb to the altitude that you need to get to the point where you're at 30,000 feet and you're cruising easily. That will always follow you. So if you're looking for shortcuts, if you're looking for cheat sheets, Alex, I did read your comment in the webinar. If you're looking for anything that's going to make it so that you can skip a step, you will lose. You will fail. You might be able to fake it for a short while. But at the end of the day, it's the agents who are willing to go through every single step and take the time to learn. And, guys, this is true with anything in life. Unfortunately, real estate seems to attract a lot of people that like to figure out how to game things. In life, the reality is that you will not be justly and long-term rewarded for gaming anything. You have to be willing to put in the effort. You have to be willing to put in the work. You have to be willing to actually force yourself into a state where you're going to try to master a specific skill, be it doing short sales, your listing appointment, pre-qualifying, lead generation. You cannot just glaze over things and just do a little of this and a little of that, and hopefully things will come together. Many of you, that's how you think you're supposed to exist. You're supposed to throw as much to the wall as you can. I'm going to do a little this lead generation, a little that lead generation. Let's just be honest here, Julie. Let's just take a little sidetrack so we can kind of grab them by the collars, right? So many of you, Julie, you're more in contact with these guys than I am.
Yes.
But the lead generation stuff that they're doing right now.
That's number one. That would be, in terms of things to figure out and systematize and get straight in your head, the number one unconscious incompetence, lack of activity, gets right down to lead generation. If you can fix your lead generation and figure that out and systematize it the way we teach you in each and every class and develop your spokes the way we teach you to do it, everything else follows. If you have no leads, it doesn't really matter if you know how to pre-qualify, does it?
If the jet has no fuel, I don't care how motivated everyone is to get off the ground. It is not going anywhere.
You can read the manual all you want to.
That's right. Okay. So here's the thought. Here's the thought for all of you, and I mean this with all sincerity. The answer to the question, what are your lead generation spokes? Remember the spokes on the wheel analogy that is our trademark Harris Real Estate University analogy. So the spokes on the wheel analogy that we give you, remember, more spokes, the stronger your wheel is going to be, but don't move on to one spoke until you've mastered it, until you've moved on to, don't move on to another and another and another until you've mastered the one you were working on. None of those, or virtually none of them, should involve you paying somebody to do it for you. I have news for you. If any of you think it's normal, okay, acceptable in the way things are done to pay for your leads, that is wrong. And I'm going to say that, and I'm sure that the small percent, and I'm only trying to really have a small percent listen here because I know most people are never going to want to take the time to learn how to generate their own leads. They're never going to want to take the time.
It's too hard, and it takes learning.
That's right. It involves some rejection.
Multiple steps. Oh, my gosh.
It does involve practice. It involves actual effort on a consistent basis. Guys, it would be way easier for me to tell you what all of you wanted to hear, that you pay this particular company this amount of money and this particular company this amount of money, and they lead generate for you. It would be way easier for me to tell you that, but it would also be a lie. It would be a 100% bold-faced lie, and intellectually, I can't do it, okay? I won't do it. So for those of you who think it's okay to pay this website for generating these buyer leads, I mean, look at all these great websites that have come about in just the past 5 years. Zillow, Trillia, Realtor.com, of course, has been around longer than all of them. And there's a lot of others, too. They all offer a great service. And maybe it's something that you add as you've created other reliable spokes that are from the fact that you know how to generate the business yourself, that comes from the sweat of your brow. If you're always dependent on somebody else to send you leads because you don't know how to do it yourself, you are never a business owner. You will always be beholden to them. Generating buyer leads, why anyone would pay for a buyer lead. Honest to God, I just don't understand. Those of you guys who think it's okay to spend any amount of money for someone to send you a buyer lead is beyond me.
It's lazy is what it is.
Now, I'm going to preface my statements. If you are a big team, if you are generating lots and lots of business and lots of free cash flow, and you're saving money every single month, and your spokes are working as they should, and you want to add a paid lead generation service, well, then you can.
That's different.
Can consider it. That's different. But for the majority of you, 98% of you, you must learn how to generate yourself. And you will absolutely, positively never get your plane off the ground for any duration until you learn that skill yourself. You will always struggle until you learn that skill yourself. And it is going to require work. It is going to require dedication. It is going to require focus. That is something that none of you want to hear, and that's the reason, for the most part, you will always stay in the first stage. Now, for those of you who are listening, for those of you who actually have the courage and the confidence to go to the next level, okay, the next level is this conscious incompetence. And so how do you know when you're in the conscious incompetence phase? Julie, do you think we should review real quick again what it is?
The conscious competence phase?
Incompetence.
Incompetence. Well, that's when you don't know what you don't know.
Okay.
You haven't started to ask those questions.
Right. So how do you know what the questions are? Here they are. And again, they're in our notes. You realize that it's possible to have consistent income in real estate. So you have that epiphany that despite the fact that everyone else you know has ups and downs in their incomes, feasts and famine, you know, the old joke is there's no cash flow in real estate, there's more cash spurts. Well, now you've actually gotten your business, you realize that you can have actually consistent cash flow. That is an epiphany. That is a light going off in your head. Now you're wondering and trying to figure out how to make that happen. You realize that there are always ways to list multiple properties at once, and that this affects your cash flow. These are other little light bulbs that go off in your head when you know you're on this phase. You realize that it's possible to list, negotiate, and close short sales with very little stress. You may not know that happens, but you recognize it's possible. I just gave you the story of Joel versus Michael, and Michelle and Joel versus Michael. You realize that REOs and BPOs are a great source of business, and that it may take more steps than you're taking to get there. You are investigating further. So in other words, basically, you understand the fact that going after what you want, REOs and BPOs as an example, is going to take more effort, and you're excited about that because you realize that 98% of the agents won't make that added effort. You will, and so you'll win. That excites you.
Again, this is stage 2, where usually in stage 2, that's when it occurs to you to start some coaching and to get some education and to figure out what you don't know and what to do about it. That usually happens stage 2.
The ego, guys, and we're not going to talk about ego, but the ego is what is going to hold you in stage 1. The thought in your head, well, I can figure it out on my own. I read this sometimes online. You know, I'm going to go online and I'll just Google it and I'll figure out how to do it. I cannot imagine the ego that's floating around with that. You know, I'm going to decide I want to be a dentist. So Julie, I'm just going to go on YouTube and see how to drill my own teeth.
You're not working on my teeth.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'll give you the most obvious example that popped to my head. Okay, I want to be an REO agent. I'm going to go Google an asset manager list, and I'm going to just download that and I'm going to just figure it out that way. Okay, so several issues with that. Number one, most of that is outdated, doesn't work, the links are bad. And even if you just do that step, there's so much more to the picture of how it all actually flows together. Some of you in the first stage think that you just sign up for ResNet and they just send you listings. But it hasn't occurred to you to actually figure out how it actually works.
Right, and ResNet says all over their website, and if you call and talk with, like Martin Escada over there, they'll tell you how it actually works. It's just a portal, that's all it is.
Right, or they'll think, well, if I just sign up on a few of these things I find on Google, well, then that asset manager will magically find me. They don't get the ResNet part. So there's all these pieces and parts, but if you're stuck in the first stage in Realtor Zombie land, you're not asking yourself, maybe there's an actual process to this. Then stage 2 where you go, I've heard there's an actual process to this. Maybe I ought to figure out what it is.
The harder something is to master, guys, the more you should be motivated to do it.
The more profit there is in it, for sure.
Because fewer people do it. The harder you should write that down and remember it.
I'll give you another example, okay? The expired list. Oh, I can't get phone numbers. Well, guess what? If the phone number's not there, nobody else is calling them. Go door knock them. Hello? Makes sense. It's harder. Yep, but you're the only one talking to them. That's why you would be the one getting the commission.
Those of you who are just basically waiting to be spoon-fed business, you better wake up to the fact that we are inevitably in what history will refer back to as a depression. You are not having just to compete with your traditional real estate types, but you're having to compete with some really smart, and these are a lot of these guys literally get their real estate licenses. We get an email from them. They said they've listened to one of our events. They don't want us – Julie's laughing.
We have an actual rocket scientist in one of our classes. No joke. I thought she was making it up.
So what happens is these people say, I want to be able to make money fast. I'm going to get my education now. I value and understand the importance of going through they don't use these words, but I value and understand the importance of going through the different stages of learning. I'm willing to put in the work. I'm willing to do whatever you ask me to do. Tell me what to do to make money. Versus a realtor who in their mind, as soon as they realize that they're up against any sort of challenge, they're going to say, oh, you know, I'm going to wait for a lead to call in on my phone, or I'll get one from, Zillow, or I'll get one from, Floor Time. And so basically you're just essentially spinning a roulette wheel hoping it lands on lead.
That is not a business. That's a hobby.
That is right. And you're wondering, why is this business so hard? Because you're not willing to go through these phases of learning. You're not willing to master anything.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up people that are from outside the real estate business. We've got a lot of laid-off pilots from different regional airlines, and when all that was happening, those guys are just so easy to coach. They always say the same thing, our pilot students. They always say, okay, so let me just get this straight. There's a specific process with a checklist, and if I do it step by step, I can win. Okay, good, I'm done. And then they go do it. And they're always surprised. They also always have the same reaction when they go into a real estate office. They always say the same thing. That's not how I thought it was. Nobody's actually doing anything in there. They're always like, what's happening? Why don't I want to pay a broker for anything? So it's interesting.
We're all blessed, and I 100% believe this. We're all blessed to be in this industry. So Julie and I are back in our early 20s. True story. And we're trying to decide out of college, we wanted to start a business together. We both had gone to good schools, and we had a business that we paid through most of we had a car cleaning and detailing business that Julie and I actually started when we were in high school, and then we built it through college. We actually ended up selling it, not for much, but the business produced a really good income, enough for us to almost completely pay for our education.
And our first house.
Okay, that's a true story. This was back when we bought our first house when we were barely 20, and Julie and I got married when we were 20 and 21. So why am I telling you this? Because we were then deciding, we had a really wealthy customer who had a bunch of absolutely breathtakingly gorgeous cars, some of the most expensive Ferraris in the world. This was in Columbus, Ohio, by the way. And so we go to him and ask him for advice. We're wondering what to do. The car cleaning and detailing business at that point was making almost six figures. Remember, we were in college, so that was a lot of money. Still is a lot of money, really, especially when you have no expenses. And we asked, so what should we do? And he gave us some really good career advice, but the gist of it is that in the reality of it is if you're willing to really master something, what we're telling you now, and he suggested real estate, actually, Jack Rosselli. Mm-hmm. If you're willing to really focus and master some specific skill in real estate and become really good faster than you possibly can imagine, you're going to have all the success you could possibly want in life. And he was right. And he also gave us another little piece of advice. He said, don't worry about, and this is contrary to what most people will tell you, don't worry about doing what you're passionate at.
I remember him saying that.
Yeah. Well, he said, don't look for something you're passionate at. He said that will essentially result in you never starting because you're always going to be having a bunch of false starts looking for something you're passionate at. He said be passionate with what you get as a result of being the best at what you do. So if you can't be passionate, I mean, come on.
That's a huge point because we hear agents, especially after, post-boom, a lot of people, took a big slide in their income, and they'll say things like, gosh, I just hate real estate now. Well, nobody asked you to have to love real estate, but as coaches, we're asking you to love what real estate can do for you and for your family. Love that. That's okay.
And love the fact that, frankly, and this is a great motivator. This is a great motivator for me as I do these calls. Is I'm thinking about all of you. Listening now and live and listening in replay, I'm actually thinking of all of you in your offices around the country, and I'm doing my best to motivate you. I'm doing my best to educate you. I'm doing my best over this, phone system and on the webinar to reach inside of every single one of you and make you realize that you can do it. You can actually be successful long term and you don't have to struggle anymore. And so many of you don't realize you're struggling. So many of you are stuck in that first phase with regards to your overall business development. Maybe inside your business you've become good at a specific skill that maybe you're on the second phase that we're talking about now, or you're maybe on the third phase that we're both about to start to talk about, but you don't realize the overall
the big picture stuff,
the overall game of, the overall mastery of running a real estate business. You're 100% incompetent at that, and you don't even know it. That's where most of you are. Most of you have natural sales skills, but you're still learning or need to learn the business skills necessary to grow it to the next level. I am thinking about you, and I'm thinking about how I can – so now, why am I telling you this? That motivates me.
Yeah, we don't have to love being on the phone with all of you at 9 a.m. on a Friday. We don't have to love that, but I'll tell you, both of us love helping you move to the next level.
I love the emails when you get the testimonials.
That's what we're focused on.
I love the fact that when I run into you guys in real life, and some of you are like, you tell us your stories and how you turn things around. I mean, literally, if I start telling you some of the stories right now that people relate to being students at Harris Real Estate University, and of course, when someone says, "Well, it's because of you guys, I was able to do this and that and the other thing, and I thought I was going to have to get out of the industry and da-da-da." I mean, we helped you germinate your seed, but at the end of the day, you were the farmer.
You did the hard work.
You did the hard work. We did the easy work. But in any event, Julie, let's go back.
Okay, so first stage, which, at least half of the real estate industry wanders around in most of the time.
Yep.
You've got to get out of that first stage. Make a decision right now. If you have anything that we described in that first stage, that this is the year you get into the second stage. The second stage that we just described, the most important part about the conscious incompetence where you realize there's stuff to learn, you've got to go on as many appointments as humanly possible. You go on more appointments, you have more failure and more mistakes, but that's what you learn from. In stage 2, you have a whole lot of effort, and it doesn't always equal results, but you say to yourself, why was that, and what am I going to do about it? If you've gone on 4 listing appointments and taken only 1 or none, something is up with that. You've got to figure out what it is and correct it, and that's what it feels like to be in stage 2, okay? If you're in any of our classes and you feel like you've done some stuff but it's not quite working for you yet, what haven't you done? What steps are you not taking? Have you tried to game it and skip steps, or do you simply, maybe there's something you're not understanding completely and you need to ask for help? So there's a lot of education happening, lots of appointments happening. The more appointments you go on, the better of a feel you get for things like using scripts, getting good at objection handling, actually using a pre-listing package, actually using a great proven listing presentation. Short sale, that's a huge thing. Okay, if you have any short sales taking longer than 90 days to close, something is seriously wrong with your short sale education. 60 days or longer really is the criteria. I'm being generous on the 90-day, okay?
So the first phase is you loading the plane. That's the realization that you need to be making some effort, and then you start reading the manuals how to get the plane off the ground. The second phase is you start putting forth the effort. You start realizing what has to be done to actually build your business and become successful. Now, you have to realize the fact that at every single stage, you can get to every single stage, but it takes time and it takes work. I'm going to say it again. If you try to skip a stage or a phase,
that means you're in stage
fail.
1.
That means you're going back to stage 1. So if you stop too soon, you will have to go immediately back to essentially the start stage. And this is learning anything.
Right.
Julie talked about Pilates. She started showing me some of these ridiculous things they're doing for abs and Pilates. I'm good for maybe 7 minutes, and then I'm out, okay, because I was going with her over a year ago, and I stopped going. Now, if I were to go back again, I got to start the basic stuff again because all that learning I have to redo. So, Jules, let's move on to the third phase.
You got it. Now, the third phase, and I have to say this is where most of our graduate, our one-on-one students are, conscious competence. This is really, for me, I think this is the most exciting part of real estate. Conscious competence, the third stage, the individual understands or knows how to do something. However, demonstrating the skill or knowledge requires concentration. It may be broken down into steps, and there is heavy conscious involvement in executing the new skill. So how do you know you're in this stage? I'm going to be very specific about this, and you want to take notes. This is the goal for most of you. You have scripts, systems, and coaching. You take it all extremely seriously. You're building a business, not practicing a hobby.
Julie, let me jump in there. I got to throw this out to the skeptics out there that are trying to filter what we're saying. Many of you are saying, oh, they're saying coaching because of the fact that they make money from selling coaching.
Oh, this is just a big sales pitch.
Yeah,
Believe me, we don't want to coach all of you.
But we do make money from selling coaching. But here's the fact. 98%, that's an important number, 98% of you will not, absolutely positively will not move forward without somebody motivating you. Only 2% of all the population are natural born at the ability to motivate themselves and move forward.
It's normal not to be a great self-motivator.
That's right. But all of you have the ability to be self-motivated and move forward. Those 2% are what we call leaders, and all of you can become a leader once you learn these different phases. The thing that the leaders understand, and that you know who these are.
Well, Michelle McClintock, good example. Okay, the reason she's coaching, she doesn't have a problem with motivation.
Right, exactly. But the thing you guys will figure out is throughout life, and you go back and you look at the people that you thought, oh my God, they're natural talent or skill. Some people are born with natural talents and skills, but the thing is, remember the analogy, the story that I gave you about 10,000 hours? They are willing to put in the time. Now, they may not have put in all the time yet, but they're willing to put in the time. They're making the effort consistently. And they need to be motivated. They need to be reminded. They need to be put back on track. You're like that too. So why do you need coaching? Why do all of us need external accountability? Because we are human.
It's normal. So don't be a skeptic. All right, so again, third stage, this is the exciting stuff. You have specific goals. They're posted everywhere. You take them seriously. You're actually following a schedule which reflects those specific goals. You're systematically building a variety of lead generators, or as we say, spokes, in your wheel of business. You use your knowledge of the DISC personality styles that we presented to you last week. You actually use those and understand them as your secret power. You're building up to your ideal number of listings. This is when you are very crystal clear on the importance of having listing inventory. Not only that, but you know how many is your magic number of listings. And Keith in San Diego reminded me the treasure map helps you figure that out, realestatetreasuremap.com. You are very clear that, for example, when you carry 10 listings at all times, it creates a very consistent 1, 2, or 3, depending on your market, closings per month. You know that that's what it takes to have consistent income. You're no longer living deal to deal to deal. You're building up that listing inventory. And every listing presentation you go on is getting better and better and better. You no longer live in fear of the wily short sale. You list them, you figure out how to get them closed, and your short sale sellers actually love you. You understand the REO process, and you're taking steps to systematically build your REO practice. You actually study your business at every level. This is where you're tracking your numbers. And again, most of our graduate students are in this zone. They've got their wipe-off boards posted. If they have to have 10 listings at all times, they've got a board that says 1 through 10. Maybe they're at 7 right now. They know they've got to get 3 as soon as possible. Okay? I'm thinking of people like Lance and Karen Kenmore, right? Right now, their big goal is to get their listing inventory up to 50. They're somewhere in the low 30s on their listings right now. Lance's goal, 5 listings this week. They study this stuff. Make sense, Tim?
And they know that when they're going through this, they hold themselves accountable to it. They know that if they haven't accomplished that specific goal, be doing the daily, having their daily minimum standards and their weekly and monthly standards, it's become second nature.
It's just what they do. It's who they're becoming.
Right. There's things that all of you do that have become a habit. I was on another graduate coaching call yesterday, and this guy I've only had maybe a half dozen calls with. He's in Newport Beach, California, and he's new to real estate. He's starting now to form. He's realizing what he doesn't know. He actually came to coaching, which was great, knowing what he didn't know, knowing that he needed to realize things, so I didn't have to beat on him.
Pull it out of him.
Exactly. So he realized the fact that, there's a lot I have to learn. Help me learn it, which I really appreciate. That's an open mind, which will eventually result in a full wallet. So what happened is that, he has this habit of working out every day. And he was trying to form, or is trying to form, the habit of prospecting, lead generating consistently every day, talking to a certain number of people every day, doing a certain amount of lead follow-up every day, setting a certain number of appointments every day. Habits. And so I pointed out to the fact that he can do it because he's done it with working out.
It's exactly the same thing.
It is.
I love that you mentioned that.
And I asked him, I said, so how do you feel if you miss a day working out? Oh, I feel terrible. I feel awful. I feel da-da-da-da-da-da. I said, okay, and so what do you do? He said, well, if I miss a day working out, I'm going to make it up. I'm going to do it on Saturday or Sunday, or I'm going to double up the next day. I have to do it. It's become something that he has to do, like breathing. That is how you become successful at anything. I've never met this guy before, but I guarantee you he's not fat.
Right. Here's the thing to realize, guys. It is the same part of your brain when you're good at something. So it's important to realize, and some of you have never had this thought before, what are you really, really great at, and what did you take? What had to happen for you to get really great at that? So, my most obvious example, Pilates, right? It's taken a lot of practice to not pass out in every class. It's taken a lot of repetition. So that's the other theme that is in this stage, repetitious boredom. This is when you have to go on appointment after appointment, and you've got to force yourself to study what's going on.
When you don't do something successfully, for example, not take a listing appointment, you don't just basically rationalize and say, oh, it's because of this or because of that.
Well, that would be stage 1 or stage 2 when you make it the seller's fault.
Or you make it basically you're willing to accept the fact that having a 50% ratio, a failure rate, is okay. Well, that was, I'll take 5 out of 10. That's good enough. No. Harris Real Estate University students, that is not good enough. You have to take 10 out of 10. It is too much work to get there in the first place in front of that seller, be it over the phone or what have you, for you not to take that listing every single time. For you not to take a listing after you've generated it, after you've pre-qualified them, after you know that they're a great listing.
You've previewed. You've spent hours on the CMA.
For you not to take it is not acceptable.
Yes.
And some of you realize that. And when you don't, and when you're at this phase, when you don't take it, you don't try to blame the world. You say, what did I do wrong? What do I need to do better?
You actually call the seller and ask them why they chose someone else.
Right. And you'll find out. I remember, Julie, I remember there was a listing appointment that went really, really, now this was when we were just getting started. Julie will remember this. Yeah. And we thought we had this listing. It was, great listing. It would have been, when you're first getting started in real estate, it would have been a nice, $10,000 commission check, whole 9 yards. So we didn't take it. And we knew we were competing against an agent who had absolutely positively had no, I don't mean to be harsh, but she had no skills. She'd just gotten her real estate license. I don't even think she stayed in the business a year. We didn't take it. She took it. We asked the seller. We called him up and said, why did you list with this other agent? Or those of you who speak Italian, che caso? And we asked them, well, what's the story? They said, do you remember the answer, Julie?
I'm trying to think which one you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. The seller said, because she asked for the listing.
Oh, yes.
So that was funny.
I remember that.
She asked
Lesson learned, right?
So we had this beautiful presentation, this cat and monkey show, and you guys can pretty much imagine Julie and I are higher energy when we're presenting. And so,
I do remember that.
We didn't take it, and the seller's answer was, oh, well, Tim, she asked for the listing. And I thought, I never made that mistake again. Ever.
Yes, and I also remember one where we asked the same thing, thought it was a slam dunk, easy listing, no problem, didn't get it. Why? Because we didn't talk about relocation.
Yeah.
What? And so we built something into our listing presentation mentioning we work with all the relocation directors in the area, blah, blah, blah. Spent maybe 2 minutes talking about it on every presentation from that second forward.
Now, there was another time we didn't take a listing. There honestly weren't that many guys in our whole career of selling between 100
So we remember them.
We remember them. But there was another time I didn't take a listing. Maybe this isn't politically correct to say.
I know which one you're thinking of, too.
It was this contemporary weird house in this weird section of Worthington, Ohio, and it was really kind of cool. And they were both professors at Ohio State. One was a philosophy professor and art professor.
I totally remember this one, too.
So we didn't take the listing. I thought I was going to get it for
sure.
we
had it in the bag.
I was excited about it. I called them up afterwards. They said they listed with somebody else who I'd never heard of. And they said, and I asked them, well, why is it that you didn't list with me, with the Harris family team? And they go, well, Tim, we decided because it's an artsy house and the rest of it that we needed to list with someone who is gay. And I can't help you there. I'm out.
Right, we're out.
Okay, that is something that I cannot overcome.
But the point
I cannot add something to my listing presentation to cover that objection.
I don't have that built in. But here's the point. You ask for two reasons. One is so that you don't make up stuff in your head about why they didn't choose you that may or may not be correct, okay? Because we could have easily jumped to the conclusion, well, they must have listed with their buddy. That's the only reason. It could have been some friend from church, right?
So my ego wouldn't be hurt.
Exactly. And you could have been 100% wrong about that. And number two, to find out what it really was so you can do something about it if you can do something about it. See, that's the difference in this third stage. You're not afraid of rejection. Yeah. You're not avoiding those questions because you might hear no, or because you might find out there's something wrong with how you're doing things.
Here's a little strange thing that a lot of you understand but maybe have got yet to learn. You learn so much more. There's two things I want you to write down. It's too soon to tell, and Julie, we got to get to the fourth point.
Yep, you got it.
But these are really important things. It's too soon to tell. Write that down. That is really important that you understand that. That's really the main thing. It's too soon to tell. When you and you really do learn more from your quote unquote failures. And I say quote, I say quote unquote because really is no such thing as failure. And guys, honestly, there's really no such thing as success. And that goes back to it's too soon to tell. And here's why. You need, as a professional, to have long-term success in anything, to keep your emotions between the lines. When you have a failure, or what you would traditionally label as a failure, start saying to yourself, it's too soon to tell. Oh, Julie, I'm sorry you didn't take that listing. That would have, paid for whatever else. And you need to start saying to yourself, and start saying even out loud for other people to hear, it's too soon to tell. How many listings, I remember, and I won't bore you guys with any more stories, but listings that really we went on, the seller wasn't willing to price it correctly, and it was in a very, downward spiraling market. We actually sold real estate, guys, unlike literally, virtually, not even virtually, literally every single other coach that you guys, there's maybe only 4 or 5 of us that have any prominence in the industry. None of them have sold real estate. Do you realize that? Do you realize that Julie and I are the only ones that sold real estate? All the rest of them just sort of, came to this space and say, well, I'll be a real estate trainer. They've never sold real estate. Do your homework on these guys.
There is a difference.
There's a difference. But I'm not going to grind them. That's up to you guys.
Right.
If you decide that hiring a coach that's never sold real estate is okay, then go for it. Right? So, when you have these failures and you get emotionally attached to it, what happens is that you stop learning. You start beating yourself up. But there's listings that we'd take or wouldn't take because the owners wouldn't price them correctly. And if I'd basically written it off in my mind as an emotional failure and said, the seller wasn't willing to price it right, the other agent must have cut their commission and all the rest of it, then what would happen is when that thing expired because the first agent basically bought the listing, I would have had a place in a roadblock in my head to actually call that seller back up and solicit the listing. Or if you don't take it, being gracious and wishing them sincere luck and leaving the door open. See, there's a difference in how you actually operate when you want to go to the next level. Well, the same goes when you have a huge success. When you have a huge success, you double into a $3 million house and you think it's all the money in the world, and maybe for you it is. Well, don't forget to pay your taxes, okay? But the fact
That'll sober you up quickly.
That's right. But the fact is that it's too soon to tell. So avoid the high highs. Don't celebrate your successes. You do. But when someone says, or you say to yourself, oh, that just didn't work out, it's a failure, it's a da-da-da-da, don't label it. It's too soon to tell. When you have a huge success and someone says, congratulations, taking the listing, if you get all pumped up and you start spending the money beforehand before it's sold, okay, then you're going to be in a world of pain. So you need to start saying all the time, it's too soon to tell. Don't label things as successes or failures, and accept the fact that when you lose, when you don't get what you're after, it's too soon to tell to label it as a failure, because if you're willing to take the time and ask why and figure out why you didn't succeed, then you learn. Whereas if you basically are successful, how often do you actually win at something, take a listing? Has this ever happened in the history of real estate? Has someone ever taken a listing and then called up the seller and said, why the hell did you list with me?
Right.
That's never happened. Okay.
You're too busy doing your celebratory listing dance.
That's right. Too busy walking around the office like a peacock, waiting to put up your new listing on the board. So
do you remember when we had a moment like that? Do you remember when we came into the office? We had just taken 3 listings in a row, and we said to Rory, our broker, we were all full of ego. We just took 3 listings in a row. We're on fire. It's great. You know what he said? He goes, obviously you're not going on enough appointments. Okay, which was putting us
Julie,
back into unconscious conflict.
Julie, that isn't what it was. It was we just went on 3 listing appointments and we took all 3.
Right.
And then he said, well, you're just not going on enough appointments.
Yes, maybe I explained it wrong.
Yeah, you did.
Meaning if you don't have enough failure going on and enough mistakes, you're not putting yourself out there enough.
If you guys are in Columbus,
and he knew that.
If you guys are in Columbus, Ohio, and you're looking for a fantastic broker, look up Rory Averill at RE/MAX North. He won't give you a lot of attention.
Nope.
He won't necessarily.
He'll keep his foot in your butt now and then.
He won't let you cry on his shoulder, but he's a great broker and he still sells. There's something about guys. There a lot of people say, well, if you can't teach, and that's not really true, as we're going to talk about here in a second. But there are a lot of people that do decide because they've never been successful at selling, then they decide to become what? Office managers, and they want to become brokers, and then they, some of them decide they want to go into other things that's, because they're not willing and weren't willing to master the basic skills. They never got out of phase one, and because it required too much work, they basically just quit and tried to go to other areas of the business. Does this make sense? Some of you, I know this is really resonating. I don't expect all of you to get it. You're not ready for this lesson, and I accept that. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, when a lesson is to be learned, a teacher will arise. We've given this presentation countless times to literally thousands of agents, and I'm confident, because I've been doing this long enough, that not all of you are going to get it, but some of you are.
Right.
Those of you who are, put in your comments in the webinar what you're learning. I really appreciate it.
And we've got to get to point number 4.
Which is, I think, for a lot of you, it is the most important point.
Yes. So how do you move from number 3 to number 4? How do you know you're about to go into unconscious competence, otherwise known as autopilot? How do you get there? Well, to go from 3 to 4, you are systematically setting appointments. Your effort actually equals results. You always use your proven lead conversion scripts. You always use your proven pre-listing package and your presentation. You can list and sell any type of property due to your skill level and your understanding of versatility. It doesn't matter if it's a short sale, an REO, relocation buyer, first-time buyer. It doesn't matter. You can handle all of it with proficiency. Effort equals results. So that leads you to number 4, unconscious competence or autopilot. The individual has had so much practice being in stage 3 with a skill that it's become second nature and it can be performed easily. You can go on a listing presentation with one hand tied behind your back because your system is so strong and your objection handling is so strong and you actually close that you know you're going to take the listing. That's how you know. As a result, the skill can be performed while even executing something else. The individual may be able to teach it to others depending on how and when it was learned. How do you know if you're in this stage? You follow a precise set of standards, goals, and scheduling. Your weekly goals consist of polishing your lead generation, converting leads, pre-qualifying, presenting, negotiating, and closing. That's what your time is filled with.
Because you now are consistently generating business, because you have
figured it out.
You've figured it out, because knowing how to lead generate and pre-qualify every single day has become second nature. You're like the coaching client who basically has got it now programmed, coded it into his DNA that he has to work out every single day. That is at this level.
You actually have 5 to 8 or more fully functioning spokes, which are predictable and duplicatable. I use Lance and Karen again, getting to 50 listings. They can tell you exactly what it's going to take to get them there. They can tell you exactly what their lead sources are, and they can tell you of their 100 deals last year, how many of them came from each of their spokes.
Some of our coaching clients are coming to us. You guys know that the number 1 agent at RE/MAX, the number 1 agent at Keller Williams, the president of Keller Williams International, the number 1 agent at Century 21. These are all Harris Real Estate University students, and they come to us because they want to master the spokes that we really specialize in, which is really at this point short sales and REOs. We are taking advantage of the market of the moment, just like you guys should. Sorry, Gary Keller, for borrowing your saying. He's the one that coined that market of the moment. But that is what we're doing. That is what you should do. But the thing is just because you get to the point where you start doing short sales, frankly, short sale listings are easier to generate. Frankly, they're relatively easy to take. The learning and the effort comes in after you've got the listing. That's where so many of you decide, well, I'm going to hire somebody else to negotiate my short sales.
Right, and they don't know.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. See how that's worked out for some of you?
A step. You cannot delegate a step. You have to learn how to do it.
So when you've gone through the process and you haven't skipped steps and you've gone through the first 3 stages, now you're in autopilot. It's unconscious competence. It's autopilot. The biggest challenge for people, and this is kind of a lot of grizzled veterans fall into this category, and certainly more and more Harris Real Estate University students who have gone through the steps in past years and months and done the homework from each coaching call in each of your classes, you guys are starting to get into this unconscious competence. The biggest challenge is not getting complacent and not saying to yourself, okay, well, since my business is predictable now, I must know it all.
Well, exactly. And so
then you stop learning.
There's all kinds of psychology associated with this, guys, as far as staying at stage 4. But going back to the whole plane thing, you're at stage 4, you're at 30,000 feet. As the pilot, let's just be honest, you're having a little lunch, flirting with the stewardess.
This is when the pilot comes out and goes to the restroom and you wonder who's running the plane.
Exactly. You're flirting with the stewardesses a little bit. if it's at night, you're admiring the stars, you're kind of chilling. Hopefully you're not playing any Farmville or anything like that, but it's not as much work as it was when you're getting off the ground, because at 30,000 feet, what's happening then? The plane is working as it should. The staff on the plane, the stewards, the systems have been checked. Your job at that point is to monitor. No, you have to monitor. Your job is to keep up on everything. But at that point, when you're the pilot, it is easy.
Easy breezy.
It's easy breezy. And so some of you have been at that stage in your businesses before for a short period of time. Or some of you have been at that stage at different aspects of your life with different things that you're trying to learn. Or maybe you're at that stage right now with playing the piano. Maybe you're at that stage right now with cooking. Maybe you're at that stage right now with bicycling. Different stages, different aspects of your life, you're at always different phases of learning. That's normal. You're not just at one big, huge, your whole life isn't just following the 4 steps of competence or mastery or learning.
It doesn't happen simultaneously in everything you're doing.
Everyone's at different, if I were to go back to Pilates, I'd be at stage 1. But guess what? When it comes to coaching graduate realtors, I've done it not 10,000 times. I've had probably 75,000 graduate coaching calls myself. I don't have to think on those calls anymore. It does not require effort.
And yet you and I still listen to tons of books on tape, tons of business stuff, because we love being in stage 3.
Well, exactly, because Julie and I like feeling challenged. We don't like feeling complacent, because here's the problem with stage 4, and this is how stage 4 is it's a double-sided coin. Stage 4 is beautiful because, let's just be honest, it doesn't require a lot of work. Stage 4 is also deadly because it's the failure of stage 4 is complacency.
Yes.
And what happens is, because it's become easy, because it's become second nature, because it's become something in your life that basically you don't have to put as much effort into, you have literally forgotten what it took to get there, and so you stop doing the things that were necessary to get you there in the first place. Julie mentioned that, as far as if we get any of you on the phone on a one-on-one coaching call, I promise you, without a doubt, without no exceptions, that you're going to leave that half-hour coaching call and you're going to feel motivated, you're going to have a lot of direction, and you are going to absolutely positively start moving your businesses forward. Not one call. It might take more than 10 or 20, or some of you might be blockheads and it might take you like a year. But the point is I'm 100% confident we can move you forward. But if I just rest on my laurels, and as Julie mentioned, we listen to and read books, Julie and I are listening to, as we work out every day, something we've programmed into our DNA, something we have to do every single day. We're listening to 3 and 4 different books on different days, because we have to continually keep ourselves motivated. We do that through new learning, and by doing that, we make ourselves better coaches for you guys.
Nobody wants a complacent coach, including us.
Yeah, and so the point is when you're at the 4th stage, you put in the work. Things seem easy. Listings are coming easy. Mm-hmm. You literally are going on listing appointments, and the seller's like, you don't even remember being there.
They just hand you the paperwork.
You're back in your office, and you go, holy crap, you're not even consciously 100%.
Yeah, but this is the most dangerous stage to be in, though.
Right. And so what happens is all of us have this little mechanism in our minds. It's ego, it's all sorts of things, but really what it is, it's when we become complacent, and then we slide back.
And you don't just slide back into stage 3. You go directly to stage number 1.
That's right.
And some of you are very clear on this, because you were just cruising right along when the boom was happening. Things were pretty easy. Everyone qualified for everything all the time. And then you didn't change fast enough. And you went directly from stage 4 right back to stage 1, and you weren't quite sure what hit you.
Exactly. And our industry is going through that right now, the real estate industry. It was in denial. And that's the other thing. It's like when people are, they've had it really good or even moderately good for long enough, it becomes complacent. It becomes easy.
It's easy to do that.
And then all of a sudden the world changes. All of a sudden someone, moved your cheese. And then what happens is you're in denial about it. And then you struggle, and then you start having financial problems, and then you basically have accumulated all kinds of debt. You burn through your savings. Okay? If we're speaking to you right now, you can turn it around, because here's the cool thing. Here's the wonderful thing about human nature and the way we all learn. If you've been at stage 4 before, even if it was only for a day, you have changed your DNA coding, so now you know you can do it. If you've never been there, and I have news for you, very few of you have gotten to stage 4 with, maybe 1 or 2 things in your lives, And maybe you haven't been at stage 4 in terms of competence for anything for decades. We talk to people all the time who basically they've stopped putting themselves in positions where they have to learn. They try to actively avoid, without even knowing it, doing the work. You guys think it's okay, and I realize that you're constantly surrounded with marketing messages. I mean, if you just look at the TV and all the commercials on, take this pill or buy this handy-dandy piece of crap, and then basically you'll be, incredible condition. It's just some sort of magic. So many of you will look at it and you'll say, oh, that's just a bunch of gimmick, but you're giving them your credit card number, aren't you? Because you actually believe that. I don't want to grind on this because people are being skeptical, I'm sure, of what I'm saying. But those of you who think that you can spend $450, spend 8 hours training for short sales, and then thinking that you're an expert, you're fooling yourself, and someone's just taking advantage of your ignorance. That is a simple fact. Julie had a call yesterday with somebody who was trying to decide between, and it's not an either or, I don't understand how you guys think, but they're trying to differentiate, let's just call it that, between getting this, designation versus actually learning how to do short sales through our coaching program. And the call, Julie, had to go.
Well, they were trying to figure out what the difference was between just sitting there and getting, a few things shoveled into your head for a few hours and then walking away with this alleged designation, right, versus ongoing coaching. Here's the difference, guys. We talk to you every week. We are accountable to what we coach you on. Hopefully that resonates with you.
We recognize the fact that this is not something that you can master without thousands of hours of effort, but you can make tons of money along the way. We are not going to lie to you and tell you that somehow you can take a magic pill and all of a sudden be an expert. Won't do it.
Well, and there are companies, there's several of them, perpetuating the idea that if you just show up and pay them, that's enough for you to somehow then get listings. That's very...
Be more specific, Julie.
Well, all right, so you go there, and I see this from some of you guys' emails where you've got alphabet soup after your names. And believe me, we believe in designations. We give them to you as well, but you're earning our designation by having to learn something.
We're the only ones in the industry that don't just give you your designation after taking an e-course. You actually have to be... The fact is that you have to be in our classes for a length of time, and you actually have to learn something.
You have to be competent.
You have to be competent. We're not just going to let you fool yourself. We're not going to essentially lie to you into believing that taking some sort of magic pill is going to make you an expert and then put you in a position where you're going to lie to the public that you're an expert.
Because you guys will say things like, yeah, but I have my XYZ designation. I should be doing more, shouldn't I?
Guys, what happened to your ability to think logically about some of the things? Here's another thing that really gets my goat, and I don't want to get on a soapbox. Boy, agents love it when I start complaining, though, but I'm not going to do it. Okay, so those of you who think that you need to pay, I said this earlier, for buyer leads, I mean, honestly, if you're believing that you should pay for buyer leads, you either A, never learned how to be a listing agent, B, never learned how to be a listing agent, or C, guess what? You never learned how to list houses. That does not make sense to me.
That's the deficit. It's not that it's not that you're not spending enough on marketing. It's that you don't know how to be a listing agent. That's the real issue.
In this marketplace, listen to your coach. Listing short sales, getting motivated sellers that have to sell is the easiest thing ever. In the past market, getting a listing was a beauty contest. Were you pretty? Was your listing presentation pretty? Was it a cute picture of you and your dog?
Well, Tim, I am thinking about yesterday, you and I ran into one person in our center of influence. He had a short sale listing.
Yeah.
We had a buyer in mind. It took 20 minutes. And those were the only people we ran into yesterday.
And we don't sell real estate, okay?
It's not that hard, guys. You can walk out your front door and door knock 10 people. Statistically, 1 to 2 of them needs to short sell their home, minimum.
Well, okay, here's the statistics, right? So you guys are clear on this. There's 4 million homes that have already been lost to foreclosure. 4 million, that's a lot, right? I mean, in the United States, there's barely 5 million home sales per year, according to NAR. And we're huge advocates of NAR, in case you guys missed that. They're the only voice we have in Washington, D.C. Without NAR, we'd be toast. But here's where it gets scary. There's 6 million people right now in the country who are in default. And the newest Obama housing programs, newest, all these different housing programs that Obama came out with a long time ago, at best, they're only a temporary Band-Aid. They're not going to do anything to actually save housing long term. They're not. Now, guess what, guys? There's 11 million. Write that number down. So there's 6 million in default. There's 11 million that are actually already underwater. The average homeowner in the United States is underwater by, wait for it, $50,000. Now remember, this is a country where fewer people have, like most people don't even have $5,000 saved, and so they're $50,000 underwater. Technically, that makes you insolvent. You are technically, if you're looking at this,
not just a little insolvent.
Yeah, you're basically bankrupt because of this house you own. Now that's what I say, 6 million. Oh no, that was 11 million. So 6 million in default, 11 million underwater. But here's a little statistic that nobody talks about. We call it the near underwaters. Those are the people that if you were to factor in normal selling commissions, a little negotiating, fixing the roof leak, paying for the title company, the rest of it, the normal selling fees, they would be underwater. So the different entities, they track the underwaters. Those are easy to track, and they are average of $50,000 underwater. But when you look at the people that say own a house that's worth $300,000 and they owe $300,000, and so if they were to put their houses for sale and have, say, accumulation of 10% selling fees, they'd be underwater by $30,000. When you factor in all those people, the number of underwaters is rumored to be closer to 20 million. So how does that actually scale out? In the country, there's roughly 300 million people. Something like half those people own homes. Half the people that own homes now are effectively underwater. Are you guys following me on all this?
So walk down your street and go eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
That's what I'm saying. And now some of your markets, some of the upper-end markets are not suffering that plight. Coastal markets, the really expensive markets are in like Manhattan. We have lots of coaching clients now that we never talk about short sales scenarios and our coaching clients in Manhattan. We talk about other things. But the fact is, guys, is across the country, it's literally half of everyone you'll ever come in contact with is an underwater owner. Those are the real, honest-to-God numbers, and I have news for you. It's going to take a long time. I'm like 10 years from now, we're going to be through this, and it's going to be a normal market where the days in the market nationally is roughly 3 to 4 months. A normal market is where, you don't run into people constantly. They're underwater in their houses. A normal market is where people have the ability to move up and move down. Remember those days? Some of you are new in the business, so this is all, what I'm telling you right now sounds foreign, and that's fine. But we're a long way from that time, 10 years probably, if not longer. So keep all these things in mind. We're in this market for a long period of time, and then you have an unbelievable opportunity to make a fortune because every single agent you come across, virtually every single one, is not going to be willing to put in the work to actually become really, really good. They're not willing to put in the work to go through these different phases of learning because they're constantly looking for a shortcut. I get emails sometimes, and I have free coaching calls sometimes, where people are looking for some way to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. And, that's the reason you guys pay for buyer leads. You want buyer leads? Take listings. You'll have to beat the buyers off with a stick. I promise you that. Take listings. Take short sale listings. They're easy to get. You'll have to beat the buyers off with a stick. I don't care what price range it is. Julie, are you with me on this?
Absolutely. I'm thinking minimum standard for our students, minimum standard should be 10 listings for all of them because then you're your own lead generator.
That's right.
It just makes sense. And again, this is one of those aha light bulb moments that if you're in the first stage, unconscious incompetence, you don't realize that. It's kind of counterintuitive that the more listings you have, the easier your life gets. Most agents in stage 1 or stage 2 look at those agents with lots of listing inventory and going, gosh, their life must really stink because they've got to take care of all those sellers, they've got all this responsibility and accountability, when in fact, the more listings you have, the more secure and stable your income is, and that gives you a lot of peace of mind. I know it seems counterintuitive, but when you get to that 4th stage, and I've been using Lance and Karen as an example because they're right in that spot between 3rd and 4th stage, their business is so predictable that Lance's coaching homework is simply to list more than he sells every week. If he sells 3, he's got to list 4 to keep building his inventory.
So let's review these. Let's review how to stay in stage 4 again. You don't let the pursuit of a novel or a new skill what works just because you're bored. In other words, you stop looking for a silver bullet. You are willing to stay focused and master a specific skill before you move on to the next one. But also there's another caveat to that. You got to be willing to walk away with if what you're doing isn't working. You just have to know how to tell a difference. And
it's because you're studying your business as if you were in the third stage.
Exactly. And you always are excited about having new goals, which are posted everywhere. This is how to stay in unconscious competence. And guys, I have news for you. Some of you, most of us, me included, the best goals to have are external goals of buying stuff. I mean, it's tacky, maybe not even politically correct nowadays to even say anything that has remotely anything to do with actually, buying stuff. But I got news for you. All of us are externally motivated at some point, and if you have to have little tchotchkes to motivate you, then have some tchotchkes. Just keep it in.
I don't care what it is. Just figure out what it is and be motivated.
Exactly. You have a coach to stay in this fourth phase. You have a coach holding you accountable so you don't lose what you've created, because you do need somebody looking in over your shoulder to make sure that you're not essentially losing focus. Somebody to remind you what you need to be doing every single day. Otherwise, it is way too easy to become complacent. You concentrate on further systematizing all of your businesses and all your business spokes so you can do the same volume or more. It doesn't become about the struggle. It becomes about how you're actually going to do more easily. The next thing that happens is you work to be 100% debt-free and then to have years' worth of cash reserves. By the way, you should be doing that even starting in the first phase, saving 10%. You continue to get better at all 5 parts of your core real estate practice, updating your scripts and skills regularly. Keep yourself in stage 3, not stage 4, most of the time to avoid complacency. In other words, you want to intentionally put yourself in the position at all times when you realize that you're getting complacent. You need to put yourself back in a stage where you're having to learn new stuff. Force yourself to be uncomfortable. And here's another little saying for you guys. Whatever you resist the most, wherever you're resisting is where your growth needs to be. So whatever you're avoiding, and a lot of it's doing lead generation on your own, not having to pay for it, that is what you need to be focusing on, because that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck.
Right. If you're not sure what you're avoiding, it's almost always having to do with either lead generation or being a relentless lead follower-upper.
It's true.
Some of you have lots of leads, but you don't have follow-up scripts. You don't have a system. It occurs to you at 3 o'clock in the morning that you need to call that person that was written down on the back of a napkin from a week ago when you were in a restaurant. So if you're not sure, chances are very good that it has to do with either lead generation, lead conversion, or presenting. And for the rest of you, it has to do with negotiating. It might be all of the above for you. That's okay. It's all right to have a lot of stuff to work on.
It's exciting.
It keeps you alive.
That's right. So hopefully this information helped you guys. You can identify at what stage of learning you are, and then you can accept the fact that, it's great the fact that you don't know it all. It's awesome the fact that you have a lot to learn. It's exciting the fact that you can actually grow and you continue to grow. We are not designed as human beings to stay stagnant. One last quick little story, and then I'll let you guys go. I want you to pretend you're shooting arrows. Maybe some of you did this in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, or maybe some of you do it for food every day. I don't know. So you're shooting arrows, and you're shooting downrange with this arrow. So you're pulling back. Imagine putting yourself in that position. You're pulling back on the bow. You've got the arrow lined up perfectly. You're holding everything perfectly. You could smell the wood of the arrow. You could smell the feathers. You're ready to launch. It's just you concentrating all your energies on hitting the target downrange. You've done this before, so it's not like you're new at it. So you know actually how to launch this thing, the arrow. Whereas if someone was new, they wouldn't even know how to hold the thing, let alone pull the bow back. But you're not like that. You're a little bit more evolved. Do you aim at the target, above the target, or below the target if your goal obviously is to hit the target? You already know the answer intuitively, don't you? If I were to pose that question, which I am right now, and you guys on the web, there's hundreds of you, put in your answer. Above, at, or below. You know that you have to aim above the target. If you aim at the target, where does the arrow go? Below the target. If you aim below the target, obviously, then it might not even hit the target at all. You have to aim above the target. How is this relevant to what we're talking about? Because a lot of you don't realize that you have to put in more effort, have to keep yourself more in a stage of wanting to always learn, in that third stage. And once you do that, you will hit your target, if not exceed your target, every single time. Your body, your mind, your soul, your spirit is not designed by God to stay complacent. You cannot stay complacent. If you're just hoping every day to hit the target, you will always fall short. What happens if you're not aiming above, if you're not doing it if you're not keeping yourself out of complacency, you will slide back. And when you slide back, guys, you will lose. And then you're going to have to go all the way back to the first stage of learning. And I frankly hope that if some of you are realizing the fact that that's where you are, I hope and pray that you realize the fact that you can do it. You can build it back. You can, and the cool thing is you can do it faster than you did it the first time. Be honest with yourself. Embrace the fact that you don't know it all. Love the fact that you have life energy in you to actually build yourself and build your business and master new skills in your life. And guys, for God's sake, seize the opportunity. Carpe diem, you know. This is an incredible industry, an incredible time. We're all gifted and blessed to be in a position where we can help so many other people. And let's just be honest, there is absolutely nothing wrong with getting rich. Just do it. Just stay focused.
It's more fun.
It is more fun. Heck yeah.
And we're showing you how to do it, so don't make it so hard. Do it in a step-by-step process like we laid out for you today. If you missed any of the notes or you need to fill in and think about this further, again, all of this is posted at realestateinsidernews.com. We've been recording this call so we can post it at realestateinsidernews.com under the Superstar interviews. So parting thoughts for these guys, Tim?
Stay focused, guys. Stay engaged. Stay connected. Keep yourself staying in a state of always learning. And for God's sake, do not give up, not even a little bit. If something's hard, your little trigger in your mind should be, you know what, if this is hard and I actually master it, that means that everyone else probably quit and didn't master it, and I'm going to kick this thing's butt. And I'll have a skill that nobody else has. The way you differentiate yourself, guys, in this market, this is the last point, the way you make yourself special, the way you make yourself exceptional, it's no longer about who you know. Don't be thinking that. That's just a BS excuse for you not to take action. It's not who you know, guys. It's what you know, but most importantly, it's what you do with what you know.
So go do something with what you know. All right, guys? So have a fantastic, powerful, and productive week. Listen to your daily motivational messages, and we'll see you in your classes. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
The moderator has